Good morning, everyone. I am Naman Dhanotia, your host for our today's webinar on good practices for quality publishing in international peer-reviewed journals.
Very good.
We welcome our honorable speaker, Professor Shailja Nandigama, respected chief guest, Professor Ranjan Gangopadhyay, distinguished research professor at EC Department, LNMIIT Jaipur,
Thank
Dr.
you.
Usha Kanun respected HOD of Humanities and Social Sciences Department at LNMIIT, Mr. Girdhar Kunkur, the librarian of LNMIIT, Dr. Shweta Pandey, the assistant librarian of LNMIIT, and all our dear enthusiastic participants. I welcome you all once again and promise you that this webinar is going to be a fruitful one for your upcoming research career. And now let me give you all a brief about our today's topic. Being a researcher requires dedication, hard work, and more than a little inspiration. And knowing how to write your research is a valuable skill. And therefore, here we are today to add some value to your quality research writing skills. And apart from being a host, I am also a participant and looking forward for this webinar. And I would like to inform you that this is not just a one-way webinar. We will have a question and answer segment at the end. We want to keep it as interactive as possible. So kindly ask your questions in the chat box during the whole webinar. And one humble request to all the participants to keep your microphones on mute and videos off for better functioning of the event. And with this, we can start our event. So now let me call Mr. Girdhar Kunkur, the librarian of LNMIIT, for the welcome address. Mr. Girdhar Kunkur.
Thank you very much, Naman. Good morning, everyone. Respected Professor Ranjan Gangopadhyay, Research Professor, LNMIIT, Professor Usha Kanungo, Head of the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences, LNMIIT, Professor Shailaja Nandigama, Associate Professor, Department of Humanities and Social Sciences, BITS Pilani Campus, Dr. Shweta Pandey, all participating faculty members, scientists, research scholars, library professionals, teachers, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the LNMIIT Central Library, it gives me a great pleasure in welcoming you all for today's webinar on good practices for high quality publishing in international peer-reviewed journals. First of all, I would like to once again make a very humble request to all our participants to mute their microphones and switch off their video, just to avoid unnecessary disturbances and noise during the webinar. Friends, everyone knows it is not easy getting published, particularly in a peer-reviewed journal. But everyone has to do it. Writing for a peer-reviewed journal presents an insider's perspective on the business of academic publishing, making explicit many of the dilemmas and struggles faced by all writers. When it comes to publishing, your choice of journal can make a significant difference to the impact your paper may have. With much to consider, choosing right kind of journal for your research is both important and difficult. Knowing how to write a good research paper is valuable skill that will serve researchers well throughout their career. And writing a research paper effectively requires certain critical steps to be followed so that the paper gets accepted by reputed journals. Having to write a research paper may feel intimidating at first. After all, researching and writing a long paper requires a lot of time, effort, and organization. The research writing process allows you to gain expertise on a topic of your choice and helps you remember what you have learned and understand it on a deeper level. The impact of good writing can be great. A well-written research paper, case report, study, or review can present data and a degree of analysis that is too difficult to otherwise communicate orally. The ability to write well can secure a grant, disperse a cogent idea, facilitate academic promotion, or influence a global audience. Faculty members and research scholars often face the arduous task of writing and publishing their manuscripts in leading international peer-reviewed journals. To improve their scientific writing skills and publishing capacity, this webinar, I'm sure, will help everyone concerned about getting published, whether they are early in their career or moving from practice-based into higher education, or more experienced but still feel the need of further information. It will certainly help everyone to become better writers. So, ladies and gentlemen, today we are extremely lucky to have with us Professor Ranjan Gangopadhyay, a distinguished and research professor at LNMIT as our chief guest, and Professor Usha Kanungo, head of the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences, LNMIT, and one of the most renowned speakers, Dr. Sailaja Nandigama, who is an associate professor at BITS Pilani campus, who is going to talk about good practices for high quality publishing in international peer-reviewed journals. I now request our Master of Ceremony, Naman Danotia, to continue with the proceedings. Naman.
Yes. Thank you so much, sir, for your warm welcome. And now is the time to hear Dr. Usha Kanungo, Associate Professor and Head of the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences at the LNMIIT Jaipur. She is also the center lead for the LNMIIT Center for Communication, Soft Skills and Personality Development. She teaches courses in English language and linguistics, which include technical communication in English, cross-cultural communication, social media linguistics, communication skills for professionals, socio-linguistics, and pragmatics. And she is focused on how linguistic approaches and methods can inform and boost English language teaching in higher education context in India. Along with this, she has also a keen interest in exploring how users express themselves on social media and how language features like multimodality and multilingualism helps in creating meaning in online communication. Dr. Kanungo's list of awards includes ICSSR International Travel Grant in the year 2017 and the United Kingdom Linguistic Ethnography Forum Grant in 2018. She has published several research papers in national and international journals and edited volumes, and has presented her research in several conferences of high international acclaim in the country as well as abroad. So without any further ado, I would like to invite Dr. Usha Kanungo for telling us the importance of quality research writing. Dr. Kanungo.
Thank you, Naman, for this introduction. It was quite humbling. Thanks a lot. So from ensuring a comprehensive understanding of a field to contributing to the repository of knowledge, from creating a niche for oneself in the intellectual media to building fruitful scholarly collaborations, the significance of quality scientific writing in academic practice cannot be overstated, as has just been shared by the organizer, Shri Kunkur. A very good morning to our chief guest, Professor Gangopadhyay, our distinguished professor at LNM IIT, the invited eminent speaker for the day, Dr. Shelja Nandigama, Shri Kunkur, Dr. Shweta Pandey, and the team of organizers, eminent members of the academic fraternity, dear participants. I'll first of all thank Dr. Kunkur for inviting me to talk on this very important topic of the importance of quality research writing within the context of today's webinar, which is good practices for high quality publishing in international peer-reviewed journals. And I'm hoping that my views on this fundamental skill will set the ball rolling for the session. And I'm looking forward to some very useful and valuable insights from our speakers on this very pertinent theme. The quote, learning never ceases, applies to every pragmatic human being. But then for us, as members of academic fraternity, for teachers, researchers, scholars, students alike, it's a little more than that. And I think it's much more than that. It goes beyond the learning for the sake of learning thing. Because while we are learning every time, we are learning something new every day, to our exposure, experience, through reading, teaching, or interacting with people on a day to day basis, every little experience does teach us something. We do learn from it. But then, as I said, as members of academic fraternity, there's something more to it. We are required and indispensably required to pen that learning down, to write it, and then send it across, to disseminate the synthesized knowledge to the wider audience. This is a big responsibility that we all shoulder. Quality writing, as I must say, stands as a cornerstone of academic system. From a teacher's perspective, writing encompasses creative inspiration, conceptualization, problem solving, reflection, and revision, along with adhering to writing conventions that eventually results in a completed manuscript. From a student's perspective, writing would be an exercise of placing thoughts on paper while developing mastery over the rules of writing, such as spelling, grammar, citation, referencing, and presenting the findings in a manner that is understood and accepted by the target audience. Of course, I must say all of these skills are required by both the parties equally, and the importance never ceases. Writing a good scientific manuscript pushes you to explore up to date and in depth information about the chosen subject and develop your critical thinking abilities. The more we write, the more we are required to explore, further study, and this leads us to gaining enhanced knowledge about the subject matter. If we are not writing, probably the learning will stop. It will come to a standstill. As and when we write, we are required to learn more and more. So so writing ensures a greater amount of learning, enhanced learning, and quality learning. So quality writing is linked to quality learning. As a showcase of your intellectual and analytical prowess, your writing helps you win credibility, recognition from the peers, research partnerships, and grant funds. All of us who are scholars, who have been studying at and have been learning every day on a regular basis, we know how if we write good, we can get hold of good funds, grants. We can build partnerships, collaborations with people, and the amount of recognition that we earn through this is beyond comparison. Effective research writing is an assured instrument for being cited. We know we all strive for being cited, and I know that we all believe that it's an integral part of career progression. How many publications you have achieved, where you have published, what is the level of journal, what is the quality of the journal or the book that you have published in matters a lot to every each and every member of the academic community. So writing is, I must say, indispensable for each one of us. Now, then coming to the point that how writing can be a challenge. Yes, indeed, writing it's a skill you can develop over a period of time through effort, through dedication, and through sincerity. It is, of course, it is significant, indubitably, it is significant. It does come off as a challenge to researchers, to new learners who have just embarked upon their academic journey. So I would say writing is daunting. But at the same time, it is not something that you cannot build. The skill can definitely be built. It is intimidating to write, to begin to write, but gradually, as you progress through dedicated, continuous, sincere effort, you can definitely achieve a mastery on writing. So, daunting yet doable is something I would define writing as, academic writing. On this note, I would like to share one slide on which I have represented some essentials of effective writing with you. So please allow me to share my screen and show what I have for you today, so that in the given time that I have to speak on, you have all the participants have something to take away. So please give me a moment. And here I go. Is the screen visible? Kindly, anybody could.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
It is visible.
Thanks a lot. So I have listed some essentials of quality writing here. And these are, as you can see on the slide, the first is initial brainstorming and an outline. Having good amount of brainstorming done and then coming up with an outline. The initial structure within your mind stands at the first place. Then preparing the research question or research questions, your research hypothesis, or it could be more than one hypothesis, and preparing and designing, thinking about what is the objective of the study that you are embarking on. So research questions, hypotheses, and objectives come at the next place. Next comes investigation and accumulation of research material. So investigating the issue, the matter at hand, the subject area, the field of study, and conducting deep investigation, deep study about who has studied, who has worked in this area, and how much of work has been done, what is the gap, and which you can, through your work, you can meet that gap, you can fill that gap. That is investigation. And then collecting, accumulating the research material, that would be the next step. Then coming up with a clear and concise title. I must say personally, I can never start writing without having thought about at least a good title for my work, because the title, it may seem something so simple as, just being a title, but if you have thought about the right title for your work, then it gives you a good direction to proceed further. Of course, some changes in title can be done later, but then having designed a good title for your work definitely gives you the right direction to proceed. And then writing an informative abstract that people can read and get an idea of what your work is about. Coming to the structure part, and there begins the linguistics area, the language part, of course. So dividing your work into the different sections, the structure part, it should be well organized. So coming up with the right introduction, the methods, the results, discussion, and conclusion. Dividing your area into these very visibly mentioned sections is the next step towards good writing. Rewriting, thinking before writing and preparing maybe the first draft, then while writing, actually writing, post writing, which means looking at the written work, doing proofreading, editing, revision, and all of those. That is again an integral part of quality writing. So coming up with the first draft, proofreading, editing, leading, and then eventually, which all of this leads to the final draft, is the next step. Grammatical accuracy. Now, no writing can be considered quality if it is lacking the essentials of accuracy and appropriateness. Grammatical accuracy seems little school studentish, but its importance never ceases till the day we write. Maybe it could be throughout your academic career. Accuracy in terms of tenses, correct tenses, concord, the agreement of subject and verb, sentence structures, parallel structures, avoiding ambiguity, and creating meaningful sentences. Avoidance of ambiguous, redundant, and run-on structures. We often see people have tried to communicate some intention, some meaning, but the way they have written, it in fact mixes up the idea and the reader gets confused. So in order for your writing to be considered quality, your writing has to be clear, understandable, accurate, and appropriate. It should be free from errors of punctuation and spelling. Again, they seem little things, but they matter a lot. Writing a variety of sentence structures, complex sentences, compound sentences, simple sentences. Your writing should be a mix of all. A rich variety of sentence structures. Rich lexical range, vocabulary, having the right word for the right intention, for the right meaning, rich range of vocabulary, and academic level vocabulary. If you are a school student, you will be expected to have a set a certain level of vocabulary. But if you are a researcher, if you are a master's researcher, an undergraduate researcher, an MPhil researcher, a PhD scholar, a teacher, a lecturer, a professor, a senior professor, it is expected that your writing contains those rich vocabulary terms which reflect your knowledge, which reflect your having read, your intellectual caliber. So having a rich lexical range is important. Then your writing should be cohesive. Your thoughts should be connected in a way that the first thought, the sequence of thoughts is important. How you begin writing, so the initial thought should lead to the next level of thought, and then the later thought, and so on and so forth. So cohesion, connectedness, and coherence in writing is as important as other elements are. Good transition from one idea to the other, one idea paving way, one concept paving way for the next concept, which is connected and should come sequentially after it. Then the second concept leading to the third one, and again, so on and so forth. So, correct transition of thoughts, unity, all of these are offer render your writing again an overall clarity and understandability, a readability, and a smooth and lucid flow. So I have listed, apart from the list could be more and more, and I could have elaborated a lot on these, but given the time constraints, I think I would like to close it here. On this note, I would say all of us are learners, all of us are researchers, scholars who have to continue to learn throughout their career, in fact, throughout their lives. So, in order that we continue learning, let us start writing, and let us strive to write quality. Let us strive to write good. Happy writing to all of you, and all the best. And thank you for having me here and giving me this opportunity to speak and share my views on this platform today. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for sharing your insightful thoughts with us and for this beautiful starting of our webinar. And I hope all our participants have taken a screenshot of this slide. So let us now move forward, and I would like to invite Professor Ranjan Gangopadhyay, Distinguished Research Professor at ECE Department at the LNM-IIT Jaipur.
Let me first welcome Professor Shailaja, from one of the most pioneering institutes in India, BITS Pilani, who has agreed upon and consented to the request by Mr. Giridharji to deliver a very important topic, good practices for good quality publications. From my own understanding, that for any good institution, strong research, quality publication, and quality assured teaching and learning process are paramount in any good institution. I naturally appreciate Mr. Giridharji that he has taken initiative at least to address one of the topics, and that is quality publication. But it is true that I imagine that Mr. Giridhar, with his able team, will continue to focus many other important aspects, how to strengthen research, how naturally to utilize the new age technologies, ICT platforms for better teaching and learning altogether. So this is just a humble beginning. So I want to put my ideas briefly in 3 or 4 slides, not to naturally waste my 10 minutes kind of the duration that is given to me. So my naturally topic will concern about towards quality publications. The most fundamental question is why quality publication matters. So this is my understanding, that it will eliminate the chance of self-defeat. What is that? Eliminating the chance of self-defeat. You see, I remember when I was a researcher, or my son was a researcher, and he failed to see that his publication is not there in a very one of the best conference like Infocom. So he was dejected. He was very much upset. And he told me about his grievance. And then I said, world is much bigger than non-acceptance of your work. Try on and try your best. So the question is, if you make your really good quality work and then you submit to a very good world famous conference or journal, you will never be defeated. So one of the most important aspect or outcome of a quality publication is that will eliminate your self-defeat. You will never be defeated. You will win by your power of quality consciousness and the amount of labor and the intelligence that you put in your work. Second point is, quality publication will instill self-confidence and self-praise. I remember when I was young, after my graduation, the first publication is not a very high journal, but the first, you see, message that I got, my paper has been selected, I am enthralled, and it builds my confidence. More and more you naturally make your quality publications, it will generate more and more confidence and simultaneously self-praise. Enhancing quality publication will also enhance professional aura, glory, and recognition on one's research. I remember one time when I was in British Telecom, and my good friend, who was the chief technologist of British Telecom, took me to Cambridge University, and he said, here is Ranjan, my friend. He came to my division, and within 3 months, he made a publication. Question is, this is recognition. This is personal glory. This is the aura you spread among your all colleagues. If, for example, now here in LNMIT, and one got a good publication with the topmost journal in IEEE, automatically he spreads the praise. Automatically he is under his glory and aura. Achieving dignity, praise, and appreciation from peers and experts. Achieving national and global recognition. So if you ask why quality publication is important, I think these points are enough to naturally motivate a young researcher why he should naturally go and toil towards good publications. Then what you need for that, and that is what is called scholastic quality and self-drive. You naturally need to have as a researcher or as even a faculty member that you must have strong fundamentals and high proficiency in the core research area. You should be fully conversant of research methodology, research ethics. You should have the adequate passion, dedication, research goals, problem identification, and strong mathematics and skills. You naturally have to have an uncompromising attitude towards research quality and targeted research conference journal. Why? whether, where, and how. Why do you want to publish? Are you ready with the answers? Is it something very new concept, new ideas? Is it very innovative, interesting? Is the work challenging? Is it related to the current hot topics you are pursuing? Whether the solutions are technically relevant and useful with high future potential? Now, if you are already have the answers for all these questions, then naturally the right time for you to target which is the journal where you should naturally publish, where your work fits in. You should avoid high impact factor journals if you do not have real challenging research. For example, if you want to publish in Nature, Lancet, Science, remember they have very high rejection rate, more than 90%. So focus in that case to more humble journals, okay, but never compromise to very low impact factor journals. How? Follow journal publications and guidelines. Pay attention to the structure of the paper, appropriate title, authors and affiliation, abstract and keywords, and the main text, which involves introduction, methods, results, discussion, and conclusions, and the end part is acknowledgement, references, and annexures. These are already known to those who have already submitted the paper. Most importantly, therefore, my words of caution and careful attention while preparing a paper. Spelling mistakes, grammatical errors, wrong usage of articles and prepositions. You should have a very well-designed figures and tables, including correct units to depicted parameters. Introduction is the most cardinal part of a research paper. Use your extreme skillfulness, expressive prowess in writing it. Use your highest writing skill to render the main text concise, well organized, and well presented. Discussion should be relevant, concise, and well documented. Conclusion, should you have clear message about research work findings, its impacts, and potentialities. All references cited in the text must be included in the reference, not test, reference list. Any act of plagiarism, data falsification, and fabrication, other violations have serious consequences and must be dispensed with. The final say is therefore that there is no safe recipe for good quality publication, and the only way naturally a researcher must put up, and that is real dedication and hard work. So we wish that any new researcher naturally should be fully conscious about should be fully have quality consciousness, and therefore put his entire energy towards his real creative activity and target always for quality conference and quality journals. And that's all that I have to say in my opening remarks towards this end.
Will be clear.
Thank you so much, sir. And I hope I'm perfectly audible and visible now. Yeah. And thank you, sir, for motivating all of us for writing quality research. And now let us move forward. And it is the time for the most awaited talk of the webinar on good practices for high quality publishing in international peer reviewed journals by Professor Shailja Nandigama. She is an associate professor at the Humanities and Social Sciences Department at BITS Pilani campus. She completed her PhD in Development Studies in 2009 from the International Institute of Social Studies, the Netherlands, with a Netherlands Government Fellowship, and also worked with the University of Sheffield, UK, and the Wageningen University and Research Center, the Netherlands, as a postdoctoral researcher. At present, she is actively engaged as an associate editor with the Interdisciplinary Journal of Environmental Studies and Sciences, published by Springer Nature, and also part of editorial board of the Journal of International Women's Studies USA. She is a reviewer of several Scopus Index journals and also a nomination committee member of the board of the Association for Environmental Studies and Sciences USA and a member of the Development Studies Association UK. She has published her research in various international peer-reviewed journals and published books and book chapters with reputed publishers like Springer Nature. Currently, she is co-editing a joint special issue on GIWS and WAGADU on contemporary South Asian feminist and youth activisms, reading social justice through queer optics. So here is Professor Nandi Gama to enhance your research writing skills. Professor Nandi Gama.
Thank you so much, Professor Dr. Giridhar Kunkur, Professor Gangopadhyay, Professor Usha Kanungo, and of course, dear Naman. Thank you so much for all the kind words, and it's a very big pleasure for me to join today in front of all of you with my few thoughts. Of course, Usha Madam and Gangopadhyay sir gave a very good beginning for this thought process that we are taking up today. And I would be adding on to their thoughts, perhaps in a more grassroots level exposure and a little bit of a personalized anecdotes and all those things. So my language could be quite informal. I would like to apologize in the beginning itself if that might not fit into the so-called formal discussion, formal presentation mode, because today I decided to target on the PhD scholars and the postdoctoral fellows and the students from the undergraduate and graduate level, so that all of us can collectively learn together. That's why I'm going to focus more on issues that are important at this level rather than at the level of professors and associate professors and other such professional levels. So today's talk I will start without any further ado. As you can see, is a friend of ours was supposed to share the PPT, sir. Girdhar sir, do you want me to share the PPT or Madam will share?
Parminder, can you please share the PPT, please?
Yeah. So meanwhile, Parminder is sharing the PPT for me. I requested so that there is no technical disturbance in the middle. So I will start discussing while the PPT is being shared. The topic for today's webinar is good practices for high quality publishing in international peer-reviewed journals. I would like to mention why we should have good quality publications in the first place. As Professor Gangopadhyay already mentioned, it is a matter of self-worth and proving your own expertise or your own mettle in a particular field of knowledge, a domain of investigation. But added to that, I would also want to say it is a matter of your next job or no job. It is a matter of your standing shoulder to shoulder with your peers or not standing shoulder to shoulder with your peers. So if you want to be a serious academic, you want to be somebody who is able to publish in high quality international peer-reviewed journals. And of course, there are a number of high quality peer-reviewed journals And as a student, you might not be able to aim at the very highest level, which is understandable. But you should not compromise. As Professor Gangopadhyay said, never compromise for a quality journal selection, because just because it is promising you in 1 week we are publishing your paper. Never ever touch those people, because that is a death trap. So you don't want to enter into those bargains where you are paying some money, and they are, without even taking a look at your paper, they are publishing it in 10 days. And so you have number of papers in your profile, but even if 1 second somebody looks into your profile and they can see that those papers are sub-quality journals, not very carefully designed, or not very, very carefully kind of supervised, kind of peer-reviewed kind of journals, then your entire profile crashes within a second. So never ever compromise on those aspects. Always, even if it takes 6 months more, that's all right. At the end of those extra 6 months, you are looking at a proper job with a proper compensation. So do not compromise on the quality of your papers. Having said that, I would like to request for a full screen, please. Having said that, I would like to continue. The title is, talking about good quality. The title is talking about the goodness in your work. So let us first try and go to the next slide, Parminder. So we are looking at slide number 2, which says unpacking the good. So basically, good for who is the question we should ask. Very quick question, but very important question. The fundamental reason why we are writing a paper is we want to show the best part of our work, the good part of our work to the world. So for that reason, we would want to first understand what is the requirement of this good quality paper. The good quality paper is required because there are readers and audience that are looking for that paper. And there are obviously the goodness is also for you as a writer, but also for the audience. Because if the audience do not find your paper good enough, they might not want to relook at it, or they might not want to actually cite your paper, or they do not want to even talk about it for that matter. So the paper must be good because the audience need a good paper. A reader needs a good paper. And of course, as a writer, you yourself need it. And the editors of the journals are definitely going to be very particular about the quality of your paper. Otherwise, they are not going to even let it go to the next stage. So all of the stakeholders that I just mentioned would want to see a good paper from the writer. So that is the first and foremost important parameter. Next slide, Parminder. Unpacking the quality aspect. Unpacking the quality aspect. What is the quality here? Basically, we are looking at, next slide, Parminder, please. Thank you so much. I can see that you have made it full screen here, so I'll follow your lead. I'm not going into my own page. That's very nice of you. So what is this quality unpacking? What is quality here? Definitely, quality is not measured in any very, kind of cryptic sense. It is very solid measurement of quality through these parameters. The first thing that we see, I'm speaking from an editorial perspective here. I just want to give you a snapshot of a sneak peek of editors' world. So editors, what they do, they look at the paper when it comes to them, whether the paper is useful in the particular said field or not, whether the paper is simply a repetition of what is already been said for several other rounds of discussions, then they would not find it useful. They would want to see something unique, something that is, adding on to the existing knowledge. So that is quality. Number one aspect of quality. What is the quality of your paper? So you can be the best judge of whether your paper is of quality or it does not have any additional value in it. So clarity and flow of ideas is yet another very important parameter we look for when we get a paper. So when a paper comes to me as an associate editor, from my editor, it comes to me. So editor tells me, Shailja, you look at this paper and determine whether this is a paper that is worth being pushed to the next level. Next level means to the anonymous reviewers. We have double-blind peer-reviewed, processes, generally in international quality journals. So Scopus Index journals, etc. So there we want to see usefulness of the paper. We want to look at the clarity, whether the flow of ideas exists or it's just a khichdi paper. A khichdi paper, we call it in our Indian language, which does not have a clear sense of purpose or meaning or any clarity, then that is not going to make it to the first round itself. In the first round itself, the paper will be rejected. That is a desk rejection, we call. So most of the paper, believe me, are desk rejected because they do not bother to check for their usefulness or for their clarity or flow of ideas. Then the other thing that is very important, professional and readable language. Without the professional readable language, as Madam Usha mentioned, you do not have a chance of having a consideration. And of course, expression and the way you talk about your story. Of course, through papers, we are telling stories. The stories could be from physics, chemistry, biology, social sciences, linguistics. The stories are from different domains, but the story needs to be clear. So the expression in which you are engaging throughout the paper is also one of the major aspects for your paper to be quickly appreciated, quickly churned out for publication, or delayed for 1.5 to 2 years because there are no quality reviewers available because of these issues. So the most important of all, even today, social and scientific relevance is a very important aspect of a paper. Even not only for a paper, but also for a project proposal. When you submit any project proposal also, that's of course another discussion topic altogether. There you must have the ability to showcase your social as well as scientific relevance through your work, through your paper. So these are some of the aspects of quality that we must take care of, which means that you need to have these two elements, goodness and the quality, inbuilt into your manuscript. Then the manuscript is very much likely to be accepted very fast also. That is the fundamental work you need to take care of. Next slide, please. So now quality, the next question is very important question for all of us. Generally, many people are very kind of angry also to some extent when somebody says your paper is not very good quality. We can't take the criticism so easily, right? But at the same time, we are also best critics of our own self. So if we wear that critic hat, then we will understand what is the quality that is required or whether what we have written is quality based or not. So some of the determinants of quality, people who have the ability to determine the quality of your paper is primarily the editor of the journal that you are choosing to send your paper to. And of course, the second and most important element is your anonymous reviewer or reviewers. Some journals stop with 2 anonymous reviews, and some journals require 3 anonymous reviews of each round. So these are, journal specific, of course, but definitely the audience and the readers, once the paper sees the light of the day, they are going to determine whether your paper is of quality or not. So these audience could include number of stakeholders, including the academic, fellows, policymakers and practitioners, and it could also have students and your general public. And the general public comes into picture when papers are related to topics like COVID-19 or cancer or something or the other. It is of general interest, right? So all these things are astronomy, for example. Some people are fascinated. So general public can also determine whether you are a quality writer or not. So as I mentioned briefly, you are also your own best critic, whether you have written something qualitative or not, you know very well. Nobody has to tell you, come and tell you, right? So occasionally media and world comes into the picture also. When things like, all these global climate change related events, tsunami or something or the other, those are, eye-catchy kind of, paper ideas. For example, yesterday I was reading how the, mitochondria work in the human body, how tirelessly and methodically they work. It is fascinating. So many different, aspects that are not your own field you could read. That's where you are, also becoming a subject for media and the world as such. Next slide. So this is one fundamental question that many of the PhD scholars ask me. And I keep on, I have my own PhD scholars that I guide, about 6 of them. Some of them are in the process of publishing, some of them are in the process of learning. So it's a journey for myself also, teaching these people, learning from their experiences also. So no fit to the journal scope or aim. This is one of the fundamental reasons why some papers are not accepted into a review process itself. This is the first level itself. So acceptance of publication ke liye acceptance is different. It's a different stage, final stage. But even for review, papers have to be accepted first. The review can be also stopped when papers suitability for the journal is not established clearly. For example, I work with a student who works in all kinds of interdisciplinary fields, and such kind of journals are very few in the world. So if I am sending this paper of my student to a very regular mainstream journal, they might reject the paper saying this is not exactly falling in our scope or our aim. So you need to, as a writer, check whether your paper is suitable to the journal that you want to send. So how can you do that? Simply read very carefully from line to line the scope and objectives or aims of the journal, and check whether what you have done as a paper will fit into that scope or not. And of course, many papers might fit into the scope, but as long as they do not have something novel to contribute, the editor may not decide to actually take it in for review process. So in terms of contributions, what is it that you are contributing new apart from the existing knowledge? That is a fundamental question we ask. And of course, believe me, 90% of the papers face the desk rejection because of the third reason. The third reason is very clear, that it is not clearly written. A paper, when not clearly written, does not have a smooth flow of ideas, is always bound to be rejected. Sometimes you are lucky if the journal rejects it within first 1 month. Sometimes a journal is not able to come to your paper for 4 or 5 months or 6 months, then you are losing out on time. Even for rejection, it takes time. So you need to be clear before you let your paper go from your desk. Make sure the paper does not have any kind of mistakes or tense mistakes or spelling mistakes. It's a big shame, I'm telling you, when some paper goes to the editor from a particular part of the country or from a particular country, and it is full of mistakes. English, simple mistakes that could be avoided. So please make sure that you do not leave out on English mistakes or grammar mistakes or sentence construction and all the other points Usha madam also mentioned in her lecture. So now it needs to be also readable. By all means, make sure that you are using simple language. You might not probably know, but the world is changing towards more simpler and understandable English rather than jargonic and complex English. So do not try for the sake of fashion, using jargons. And of course, sometimes the danger of using too many jargons is the real meaning is lost. People have to open a dictionary for every sentence 5 times, then your sentence and the meaning is lost, isn't it? So do not try to be fashionable with jargons at the cost of the meaning. So meaning is important, and if somebody is not able to understand what you are writing in such a flowery English, your paper is a failure. So do not attempt complicated structures or complicated sentences. One sentence, one meaning, at the maximum 2 meanings which are closely related. Lengthy sentences are a very big turn down. Do not enter into a lengthy sentence game. And of course, grammatical mistakes are a very big put off. Any paper that comes to me with more than 5-6 grammatical mistakes, I know that the writer did not do enough to kind of contribute to the best of his ability or her ability. Especially if it is a bigger group of writers and the paper comes with mistakes, then it is even more clearer that the big group of writers have ghostwriters in it. Those who never contributed a single word to the paper. Again, I would also want you to watch out for it. Do not encourage ghostwriting practices. Don't be a ghostwriter. Don't allow ghostwriters, because it reflects on your quality of paper also, right? So too much repetition, same meaning in different parts of the paper is also very, kind of off-putting. Am I audible, Shweta ma'am?
Yeah, yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Perfect.
okay. Thank you. If I lose out on my connection, feel free to
Sure.
call me on my phone and let me know, okay?
It's perfectly
Thank
fine.
you. Yeah, thank you. So too much repetition is too bad. Please do not do that. And, definitely never ever try to, get into a journal which is not immediately relevant to your own domain. If the journal might be very, very fashionable, like journal like Science or Nature. Of course, I'm just giving an example. Even People who are senior in their career would find it difficult to get in their paper into these journals. So I'm just giving an example. Do not try to get into fashionable journals just because they are well known. If it is not relevant to your topic, do not get into those places. But again, if you are by mistake joining or sending your paper to a journal which is slightly related but not entirely related, that journal could actually make a decision to transfer your paper to another sister journal. So when you are submitting your paper, make a choice that if are you open for transfer, internal transfer, they ask. So you can say yes. Click that box so that the journal that you are submitting knows where to send your paper. They know where your journal fits better, where your paper fits better. I'm sorry. So that kind of an option is there these days. For example, Springer Nature, where I work with, always tries to transfer the papers that are slightly misfit to a particular journal from one to the other. That works very well actually. So the most important aspect as the editor myself, I find it very off-putting when a paper does not get edited properly and is a hodgepodge of ideas or is completely disconnected in terms of its progressive flow of ideas. So editing a paper before even it goes to first round of review is a very shrewd strategy. Don't think that final round mein dekha jayega. That's not going to happen because you will never reach the final round in this case. So did not get the required attention from the writers or team of writers. I already mentioned the writers or the team of writers, if they do not give enough attention. This always happens even with the so-called professor-student papers. Students are sometimes adding some things without the knowledge of the professor or the other way around, and that is not agreed upon, and then it becomes like a hodgepodge. So those kinds of things should be avoided. There should be complete synchronization between the authors of the paper at every level. Okay, and plagiarism definitely is a no-no, because every time there is a plagiarized content, you might be blacklisted for your entire life. So the academic life stops with the plagiarized content. So do not ever hesitate to write in your own words, even if you think they are not beautiful. At the end of it all, you might find them very, very appeasing and very, very enticing as an idea. So do your own work. Do not hesitate to give your own thoughts into the paper. Next slide. So structure of the paper, we all know very well, but still I will quickly go through. Title will be important for us, abstract with keywords, introduction, methodology, review of literature, results and analysis of results, discussion and conclusions, policy recommendations wherever applicable. So all these elements are present in most of the papers. Some papers do not use a couple of sections. For example, some papers end up combining results as well as the discussion of the results in one section. Or for that matter, policy recommendations may not be necessary for other papers. So it depends on the discipline that you are belonging to. By all means, refer to your professors. Always depend on your professor, supervisor for guidance. They know very well what is good for you. Always get into their good books and discuss with them what is it that you need in your paper. Do not hesitate to approach. Next slide, please. Right. So why do we write research papers, write papers in the first place? A bit of this already was discussed by Professor Gangopadhyay and Professor Usha. So I'm going to kind of browse through quickly in the interest of time. Basically, we want to write a paper because we have something very meaningful or something comprehensive that we want to share with the world. Hey, I have something valuable. I want you to know about that. That is what is an idea, single idea, or a group of ideas that are closely related to each other. So never ever do the mistake of putting everything in one paper. Usually that's what we do as PhD scholars, right? We have like 10 great ideas and we want to write those 10 great ideas in one paper, and it will take all the 4 years. By the time we are defending our thesis, the paper is still in the editor's desk. So don't do that. Divide your ideas into smaller parts, and then connected ideas can go together, but essentially try and make judicious selection of the content of the paper. Do not put everything there. And we also have this kind of a fetish. When we are students, we want a single paper with all the answers available in it, right? So we also complain, अरे भाई कितना पढ़ना पड़ता है एक एक आइडिया के लिए, सब कुछ एक साथ क्यों नहीं देते हैं? देते नहीं है. That is the rule. सब कुछ एक साथ देना नामुमकिन है for two reasons. The first reason is we are not able to do justice to all the ideas in one single paper. Of course, there are papers running into 40, 60 pages. I understand. Those papers try to attempt a little bit. Review papers are there, which reviews number of ideas together. Those are exceptions. We are not talking about those. They are papers that are attempted by advanced stage academics. At our stage, early career researchers, the idea is to have clarity and comprehensive treatment of singular few ideas that are connected with each other. Now, central question, hypothesis, or issue should be investigated, and definitely make sure that you are always attached to your central hypothesis or your central concern or issue that you are investigating. Never ever go away from that particular central idea. Of course, there are a number of styles that you can adopt while writing the paper. Narrative style is very popular in social sciences and humanities, and of course the what you call parenthetical style is important in physical sciences and biological sciences. So all these aspects are also that you can kind of look into and cultivate good habits, good practices. That's what we are doing today, good practices of good publishing, writing. So communicating the research results and the analytical conclusions and the essential knowledge, furthering the knowledge in your domain is what you have to always concentrate on. So that is the reason, one of the major reasons why we are writing papers. It's not simply, as I mentioned, it's not simply for a job. In the beginning I mentioned, but the job context is very real. At this moment we are shortlisting applications, and the shortlisting of applications has one major criteria, which is number of international peer-reviewed journal papers. Without those papers, we are not going to shortlist that candidate, no matter however bright that candidate might be, or that candidate has 2-3 gold medals in every stage. No, I'm so sorry, we can't do anything, because the paper criteria is the primary criteria, right? So you need to be clear on what you are looking at and what you want, how early you should start. Give and take 2 years for a very good quality publication, 1.5 years for a good quality publication, and above average quality publication, it will take at least 1 year. So if you are planning for a completion of your PhD with 2 publications, when should you start? Ideally in your end of your second year. Even before, if you can start, that will be ideal, because we start our literature review in the first part of the second year. First 2 semesters we are doing coursework usually in all universities. At the third semester, you are actually preparing your proposal, or you are trying to come up with the literature review and all those things. So at that stage, if you start preparing for writing with all these elements in mind, you would be ready with a paper at the end of the second year, and then submitting it in the third year will result a publication to come together at the end of the third year or at the beginning of the fourth year. So this is the larger, longer journey. And again, I'm repeating, never ever submit your papers to those 40 days mein publication, 10 days mein publication. It's useless. Don't do that, because you are not going to benefit anyway from that, and you are going to feel guilty for the rest of your life for doing that. So don't fall into that trap. Next slide. So when we are talking about the title, we have talked about the structure of the paper, right? Quickly, title part is the most important part of your title, of your paper. Why is the most important part? Because that is exactly what people look at. More than 100% people, Mehul, you can talk about your questions at the end of the presentation. I wanted to mention, I'm sorry for not mentioning. All the questions, please write in the chat box. We have Shweta madam helping us. She will help me with the questions, and then we will address those questions one by one. Please be patient with us. Thank you. So the title part is the most important, because that is the really the first thing that anybody can see or will see in your paper. And believe me, 99% of the times the title will allow us to know whether we want to get into the details of the paper or not. The title is unappealing, we will move to the next paper. So the paper, why should it be important? I'm talking now at the level of post-publication dynamics, right? So title देख के ही पढ़ेंगे ना, तो टाइटल देख के नहीं पढ़ेंगे तो आपका पेपर तो रीडर्स भी नहीं पा रहा है, रीडर्स नहीं मिल रहे तो आपके साइटेशंस भी नहीं होंगे, तो साइटेशंस नहीं होंगे तो वो पेपर तो फिर जंगल में मोर नाचा हो गया. So that is the problem that we want to avoid. So we want to have proper titling. So title of the paper which is reflective of your topic and exactly communicating the purpose of your paper. I want to also mention one thing. Some disciplines have this practice these days for past 15-20 years of giving very, very fancy titles. By all means, be fancy in your approach. But if the title is all the things fancy, all jargons, all acronyms, that is not going to actually communicate the nature of your paper, right? So don't fall into that too much of fancy titles. Try and mix a good mix of fanciness with your title, purpose of the title, quality of the title, or try and dominate the quality over fanciness of your title. That is something that you can do for yourself. You will only see the benefits at a later stage of your career, not maybe at this stage. So fundamentally, title is the aspect which aids the readers to make the decision whether to read it or not. And of course, keywords in a title always are very useful. Keywords as in, for example, I'm writing about climate change and the impact on farming families in Rajasthan. So climate change and its impact on farming families of Rajasthan is a very clear title. Anybody who is searching for that particular information will come to my paper and they will read my paper. But if I write some fancy, some kind of fancy names in it, and then I will expect the readers to come and read, it's not going to happen. So acronyms should not be used unless absolutely necessary. And also, the most important recommendation I give to my students at different levels, a title should be a mirror to your mountain. A mountain exactly is your paper. So if a mountain is put in front of the mirror or a mirror is put in front of a mountain, you will still see the mountain, right? So the same way, the paper's title should be a mirror to your mountain. Now, it could be a statement form, or it could be a question format. It could be, mutually dependent two parts or explain each other explaining the other part. That symbiotic, explanatory kind of a relationship. Separated by a colon or by a hyphen, it can take any form as long as it is actually communicating the meaning. Next slide. So writing an abstract is a fundamentally technical skill. So technical skill, why we call it technical? Because it is not having enough space to detail everything. It is not a very long or lengthy space. And it is not going to help you to explain all the things that you want to explain. But at the same time, you are expected to put everything important in the abstract. So that after the title, many academics look into the abstract. But why they do that? Again, the same reason, whether we should waste our time of getting into this paper or not. Of course, I use the word waste our time. I'm sorry for using the negative word, but that is what it is most of the time if the paper is not well written. So abstract is that particular step which is vital to determine whether the quality of the paper is reflective in the abstract or not. That is the decision we also take as reviewers, editors. When I am editing a new paper that is submitted to the journal, I look at the abstract. I will see whether the abstract is written in a mature way, or it is written in a childish manner, or it is written in a very callous manner. Depending on that, I will make the assessment of the entire paper, how it is going to be. This is the truth, actually. So abstract needs to be extremely professionally, skillfully written. Now, what are the elements that should go into abstract? Quickly. What is the puzzle that you want to solve in your paper? What is the problem that you are investigating in your paper? That needs to be very clearly mentioned in 1 or 2 sentences. And of course, the general problem that your work is sub-part of must also be referred to. For example, if you are talking about COVID emergency and the black fungus, how it is the black fungus scare that is happening. So we need to obviously address the larger concern of COVID side effects, and then only we can introduce the point of black fungus side effect, right? So comorbidities and all those discussions can come later. Now, when we are looking at fundamental aspects, the larger dynamic or larger background must be referred to, and especially your concern, primary concern in your paper must be put into that context. A concise background of the issue should also be given. Just now I mentioned it. And of course, jargon-free sentences. Please remember, don't use any jargons at this stage. Jargon-free sentences that are providing a basic introduction to your work. Why jargon-free? Because even if somebody comes from an outside discipline, they want to read your abstract and make sense of it, they should be able to make sense of it. Yes, I understand some disciplines have too many jargons. They are specific to scientific disciplines. They cannot be avoided. I'm talking about general papers, okay? Very scientifically motivated papers with a few, there is an epistemic community of biologists. And biologists always know common terminologies that known to each other. That we cannot avoid. The same thing applies to physicists or social scientists. We cannot avoid. But make an effort to make it more and more readable to a common person, so that the common person can, after all, the purpose of knowledge is for the entire world, not for my discipline people or your discipline people. For the entire world, it should be useful. So at one level, we are responsible to make it useful for the entire society and readable, understandable. So 1 or 2 sentences giving more detailed information and, giving how the people that are part of your own field, what they can get out of your paper. So practitioners and scholars working on your own field should also be able to get something out of it. If the paper is too generic, too general, then why should the fellow scholar come into your paper and read it? Because it's too general anyway, no use. So you need to balance out that the general public can also understand. At the same time, your practitioners, your fellow peer scholars, academics can also gain out of your paper. So there should be information for them also. 1 or 2 sentences summarizing the methodology, very important in all disciplines. What methodology have you followed? And what you find, the kind of main findings also should be mentioned here, because we want to understand by reading the abstract what is the primary take home you are giving us. So that is also very important. And of course, 1 or 2 sentences detailing some of these findings, explaining so what. So yes, we found this. So now what? That also you should mention. Now keywords are obviously very, very important, and you should have a very good sense of perception to decide which keyword you want to put, which you don't want to put. A maximum of 4 to 5 keywords are asked usually. So try and choose keywords appropriately, right? Next slide. So introduction, again, is a very important aspect of your paper. I'm using the very important for almost every part, but that is the truth. They have their own purposes, they have their own functions, but every part of the paper ends up delivering a particular purpose. In the introduction, many people end up copying, pasting the abstract in the introduction again. And please don't do that. That is a very, very negative attitude many people follow. And the moment editor or a reviewer looks at that behavior, they know that you did not, really make an effort to develop your paper properly. So try and use by all means some points, but do not, as it is copy paste mat karna. Okay? So what is the issue problem at hand is discussed in introduction. I'm now discussing the functionality of an introduction in a paper, irrespective of whichever discipline it is. So the issue and problem at hand should be introduced properly, and what is already known on the particular theme should be introduced. Definitely a small background should be given. And what is the paper aiming to accomplish should be also mentioned in the particular section. And the relevance of your paper to society. As I mentioned, social relevance is one of the major criteria. When I worked in Europe for almost 10 years, I had been, none of the projects that I worked for had the absence of the social relevance column. And in fact, many competitive grants were only awarded based on the social relevance of that particular project. Of course, it is scientifically relevant. That is given anyway. All academic projects are scientifically motivated. But what is it that society gets out of it? So definitely very important aspect of what is it that society is going to gain out of your work. That a bit of a mention, Of course, it will be difficult in some fields like astronomy to, argue how the society will gain out of astronomy. But then astronomy in itself is a very important, subject, because we know that at any point of time, any kind of asteroid falling on Earth could create a big, great, and then a lot of nuclear activity, and all of us could die. So those kind of informations can be very unpleasant, but then certain connections need to be made so that the science makes sense to all of us. So scientific social relevance is very important. Main contributions should be also mentioned, and you can, as a practice, you should cultivate this habit of giving cross references within the paper. Like, for example, if you're writing section 4.2 will elaborate on this issue, so that in the introduction itself, somebody is reading, they know where to go for that particular point. See, so that kind of a cross-referencing style is very, very methodical and very skillful and efficient. So apart from that, you also need to talk about what is it that, okay, you have found this aspects, but so what? What is the point of doing all this work? So the implications should be given. And sometimes it is a good practice for the young researchers to lay out the structure of the paper, like, second part of the paper deals with this, third part is dedicated to the discussion of the results, or fourth part is blah, blah, blah. So this kind of a structurization should be given, and sometimes senior researchers omit this kind of a activity that is allowed for those people not at your level. Please don't omit those things, okay? Next slide. So methodology part is extremely crucial to understand the validity and the reliability of your findings. So methodology section should be very, very elaborately given, if not in 2-3 lines, but at least in 2-3 paragraphs if possible, depending on the total amount of words that a paper is expected to have. Dedicate healthy amount of space for methodology section, and in the methodology section you are essentially explaining to the reader how did you do your research. So clear and robust discussion is very important. What is the methodology and why it is taken, why not other methodologies? So that question is very important to be dealt with. And rationale for using this methodology, what is the advantage of using this methodology? What are the aspects that are important for the current research as well as for future researchers? There will be future researchers reading your paper, remember that. Young researchers, how do you motivate them? You should actually kind of unpack things for them, for the future readers, future researchers. Methods of data collection and experimentation, data production must be revealed properly, because most of the time data is only discussed without actually explaining how that data has been arrived at or gathered. That is a very ethical kind of a explanation which one should give. And methods of data management, if relevant, should be also discussed. For example, in science disciplines, data management is as important as data gathering. So that is also very important, and analysis part is also very important. And of course, the most important of all is your own bias. Of course, many people think there is no bias in science disciplines, but that is not true, because science is also produced by humans who are biased inherently in themselves. So any subject, any knowledge that comes out of humans is biased. But only reason what we have to do is to recognize that we are biased and adjust for the bias. We call it sometimes as an error, adjustment of an error, or sometimes as some other word. But definitely, we need to reveal our own biases and self-reflexivity, whatever is applicable. Next slide. Review of literature is a very important step that PhD scholars and young researchers are going to have in their entire PhD journey, or even after the post-PhD journey. The literature review is that practice which never leaves us. Actually, we are always reading. When I was young, my cousins who were preparing for civil services, they told me, prepare for civil services for 1.5-2 years, and you don't have to read anything for the rest of your life. But if you do research, you are actually reading for the rest of your life. So I said I would like to be a student for the rest of my life. So review of literature is that part of our life which never leaves us, because we are always trying to keep tabs on what is happening in our field, what is the state of art research, and that is only possible through considering state of art knowledge. So review of literature is essentially very, very important for all of us, irrespective of the domain or the field of research. That is because we want to know what is already known in our theme, what is already known in our area, and what is new, or what is the gap, research gap. What is unknown or what is missing is the research gap that we want to fill through our research. Sometimes it could be very frustrating. Everything is known to everybody, then what is this point of doing research? That's what many students ask. Many students also say, how do I find a gap? There is no gap. Everybody has filled all the gaps. No, that's not true. There are gaps at every level, which needs to be unearthed and recognized and revealed. And then you can work around filling that gap. So the finding the gap itself is a primary product of literature review of literature. Now, why is it important to fill the gap? Because we want to, again, go back to the social and scientific relevance part, right? So that's where the gap connects with. So when you're, what is the position of a researcher in the larger dynamics? For example, epistemological concerns, ontological concerns. These are some of the issues that all of us are grappling with. So what is your position with regards to a particular stream of knowledge, whether you are willing to accept it or you are against it, and if you are against it, why you are. So the reasons for agreeing and the reasons for disagreement or being neutral, these are all part of your literature review experiences. So majority of the in-text citations are obviously are very important. The in-text citation process are going to come in this particular section only. So it could be very bulky section of your paper, but do not compromise on the quality of literature review. Now, do not try and make it unnecessarily lengthy. You need to be optimal in your literature review preparation. Neither too short nor too long. Optimality is very important. Again, it's subjective. Optimalization is subjective depending on the discipline, specific to discipline and specific to the paper, nature of the paper. If it is a review of literature paper, for example, based on the entire review of literature on a particular theme, then the entire literature review takes a longer part of the paper. But if it is a discussion of practical results, then the review of literature could be slightly shorter and the discussion of the results could be longer than literature review. So depending on the nature of the paper, the position of the positionality of the literature review differs. Next, please. So analysis of results and discussion of the results is essentially two different parts. The first part is, what did you find out? What are the results of your study? And then you need to pick up those results and discuss the analysis of those results. If the results are this, of course, results come from the analysis of data, right? But that is not the analysis we are talking here. We are talking about the analysis of results itself. So first data analysis and results, then results should be analyzed again so that you can come up with your contentions, your arguments, your observations, so that your recommendations can be, brought out. So all these aspects are very important in results and analysis of results. So you usually signify your writing with our study finds, or we show, those kinds of things. And then analyzing the findings itself, you will be talking about, sentences like, based on our findings results, we are arguing that blah, blah, blah is possible, likely to happen. So these are the ways in which you discuss your results and analysis of results. Next, please. So concluding remarks and policy recommendations, again, a very important aspect of any social science paper, because we are very much policy oriented in all our social science disciplines. Why we are policy oriented? Simply because everything we do is supposed to improve on the existing situation in social sciences and also in other sciences, which are linguistics, languages, etc. Why am I calling everything a science? Because science is equal to knowledge, and everything that we learn in our life is knowledge based. So everything is scientific. There is no difference between languages, social sciences and sciences at a philosophical level, because they are all science, they are all knowledge only. And in fact, I also tell my students, never ever think that the humanities and languages are inferior, because that would be very kind of unfortunate thinking, because without the languages, there is no communication. We don't have anything to do without language, right? So please avoid thinking in hierarchical manner with regards to disciplinary divide. It's always interdisciplinary what we do. Now with that, concluding remarks, policy recommendations are essentially based on the results and the findings that you have, and you will be able to make some recommendations for future action for improving the situation further, and highlighting definitely some theoretical as well as methodological contributions from your research paper is important, because you are a scholar, you are not a newspaper journalist. So since you are a scholar, You are going to talk about the theoretical advancement you attempted, methodological innovation you engaged with, and all these other elements must be also mentioned here in the concluding remarks. Of course, you will have to reiterate, as in you will have to, you open the threads in the beginning. Now it's your job to tie the threads, tie the loose ends. So here you are tying the loose end by bringing back the central puzzle and explaining how you solved your central puzzle and how your paper has advanced the knowledge in the particular domain, whatever your domain is. Now, also apart from that, you are responsible to point the way forward for future research. You might not have been able to do everything in your paper or in your study, PhD study. Some things might be left out because of some practical reasons. So those practical reasons should be admitted, and those areas should be identified, lined up, so that the future researchers, when they read your paper, they know, okay, research gap 1, research gap 2. These are the research gaps you are actually sharing with your fellow academicians. So that is also very, very healthy practice in writing papers. Don't think that मैं यहाँ पे लिखूंगा तो ये मेरा idea चोरी हो जाएगा. नहीं, बिल्कुल नहीं. Social products, these are all social products. Ideas are neither yours nor mine. They are products of our society and our circumstances. So we need to respect and share knowledge with each other. Shared knowledge is always growing, and knowledge not shared is dying out. So we will share knowledge. So a paper that starts on a query could also end on a query. So you might start a paper with a question mark, how to understand blah, blah, blah. Then you could probably come back and say, similar question, you could end up with a newer question. Then the newer question will further advance your knowledge into the future. Okay, now next slide, please. Professor, of course, referencing bibliography are definitely very important aspects. As I quickly mentioned 2-3 points here and move on to the next last part of the presentation, 2 minutes. So the referencing bibliography are very important. We know the differences between referencing and bibliography. I'm not going to explain here to you. Now, the acknowledgement part is very important. Funding, if there are funders, please never forget acknowledging them, because they have been kind enough to recognize and value your efforts. That's how they funded you. And without their funding, perhaps you could not have come up with this knowledge. So the thanking your respondents is extremely important. Those who are giving you the data and those who are cooperating with you in the laboratory or any other experimentation. And of course, your entire team, staff could be there, office staff could be there, field research assistant could be there. So all these people are integral to your work. As I mentioned, none of these things are your own. They're all social products. If only your office staff did not cooperate with you, created problems to you, you could not have been able to submit the paper on time, maybe. So those are some of the things. Of course, we are thanking them for not creating problems, which is not a very good thing, but still we should recognize that, right? Anyway, now reviewers should be thanked, editors should be thanked, because those people are working without an extra payment. They are spending time for you and the rest of the world. Any editor, any associate editor like me never gets a single penny out of our work. We are doing it out of our passion and out of our commitment to the advancement of knowledge. Now, supervisory team members and other relevant parties should be, also very profusely thanked for all the pains they take on your behalf. They facilitate your work and your life for a long period of time, adult life, right? So you should be very thankful indeed. There might be some disagreements, and without disagreements, there are no supervisions, I'm telling you. So you should respect the disagreement and the professor's decisions for you. I'm again being very direct here. You might find it's difficult sometimes, but mind you, it is going to only help you by following the orders from above. And you might actually be able to create some space for your own self to interact more with your work if you learn from the seniors. The seniors could be your senior PhD scholars, your professors or their seniors. It could be anybody. Don't worry about it. And of course, the entire process of take care of the cover letters, the rebuttals, resubmissions, title pages, anonymity, all these these are all professional behaviors one should cultivate. And the earlier you cultivate these behaviors, the better researcher and better contributor to the world you become. And that's on that note, I'm going to RSID, because that's exactly where RSID comes in, being a very honest and very upfront contributor to the knowledge pool of the world. Next slide. So RCID is something which is very, very important for all the researchers of the world at this point of time. It started few years back, and they are going to help us much more in the future also. Right now they are giving us a particular ID, which is the Open Researcher and Contributor ID, ORCID. So this is actually a free beneficial feature that all of us should be or must be using wherever we are in this world, because it is free and very efficient for all of us for our purpose. So it is actually connecting the research and the researcher with the community, larger community. That's a fundamental feature of RCID. And how does it happen? It's a non-profit, not-for-profit organization. It is not working for money or anything, or they kind of get sponsorship from someone to basic करने का छोटा मोटा ऑफिस वर्क वगैरह वो सपोर्ट मिल जाता है उनको, but they are not otherwise for profit. Now their vision is very clear. They want to create a world where all can participate in research, scholarship activities, and also innovation. And also they are uniquely identified, all the researchers, and connected with each other to their contributors across the different disciplines, borders, and time. Now their mission is simple: to enable transparent and trustworthy connections. These are very important in academic life, I'm telling you. The moment you start establishing transparent and trustworthy connections, you see yourself growing exponentially in no time. Otherwise, it could take 10 years for you to even know certain resources. But being in RCID, by being in that network, by being visible, you might actually crack into those networks in 1 or 2 years. That is how fast you will grow as a researcher. Please be in RCID. Create your ID as soon as possible. Today itself, if possible. So registering your ID is very simple and free. It is a unique and persistent identifier. And of course, using your ID makes you visible more, and your institution will be also able to put those resources on top of your name, or you are also being recognized by your institute for your promotion rounds and all those other mundane realities that we cannot ignore as academics. So all these things are possible. Next and last slide. What are the benefits for researchers? Researchers are benefited immensely with this RCID, I can tell you from my own experience, because you are distinguished from every other researcher. Mind you, it could be another Sailaja Nandigama in another part of the world. I am different from her. My work is mine. Her work is hers. RCID ID enables it. For example, my boss in Netherlands, of course, Naman mispronounced it. It is Wageningen University, Wageningen. Wageningen. It's a tough name to spell, but it is a Dutch name, so it's Wageningen. And the university is 62nd in the world. When I worked there, it is now much more higher in ranking. So that university, in my university, my boss, supervisor rather, when I was postdoctoral, he had used different names at different parts of his career. And all those names did not affect his growth, because he has RCID ID. ID is the same. You can use different names. You can use parts of your name. You can use different spelling by mistake. Still, it is all right because you are using your RCID. RCID saves every part of your work very safely on your name. Research outputs and activities will be correctly attributed to you. That is exactly what I mentioned now. And the affiliations and contributions are reliable and easily connected to you. So Sailaja Nandigama BITS Pilani RCID is unique. There is no other RCID available on that identity. So filling out of the forms and when I'm doing reviews, when I'm doing editing, all those contributions are immediately connected to my RCID. So my profile is building. It's almost like every act of kindness I do as an associate editor is attached to my ID. So that somebody looks up my ID, they want to make me editor or some other higher post, they will immediately invite me, for example. So those are the benefits of being in RCID. You will enjoy improved discoverability and recognition. That's exactly what I mentioned. And you will be able to connect your record with growing number of institutions, funders, and publishers. You could be working with 10 institutions, just being in BITS Pilani or in LNMIIT. You might be working with multiple institutions, and that RCID ID connects you to all these institutions also. It is your record, it is free, and it is forever. That is the promise RCID gives. So for all these reasons, immediately go and create your RCID after this talk. Any questions and suggestions, I welcome. The last slide was supposed to be making you feel happy while writing and publishing, which is a tough task. Still, we can try. Yeah. Thank you all.
Yeah, thank you so much, ma'am, for this informative and interesting talk. And it was packed, really packed with knowledge and learning for all of us. And I can see many wonderful comments in the chat box for you. So, and I request all of our dear participants to kindly fill up the feedback form. Your feedback is really important to us. The link will be pasted in the chat box. And here comes the time for question and answer segment. So I would again request if you all to kindly ask your questions in the chat box, and we will try to answer as many questions as possible. So I request Professor Nandi Gama to kindly answer the questions asked by our dear participants. Yeah.
Let me check what is in the chat box. Shweta ma'am, I'm doing it right away. So some good mornings are there, and thank you Karnakar sir for appreciating the session. And it was before my session, so it was for Gangopadhyay sir. Okay, good. And Usha ma'am. So now what is it? Okay, so Sankantirvanan. Oh, hi Sankantirvanan. So can I send my paper to more than one publisher? Is there a way to publish a paper in multiple journals? That is not allowed, Sankantirvanan. Very good question. It's almost like getting married to multiple persons. Can we do that? We can't. We shouldn't. So paper goes to only one person, one publisher at a time. A publisher addresses your paper in their own particular process, which is predetermined, and it is pretty much standard for across the spectrum of multiple journals. I'm talking about journal publishers here essentially. And one publisher determines the utility of your paper for their purpose, and they will be accepting it for review or rejecting it with a desk reject, or they'll be sending a recommendation, review and resubmit. So all these things are possible, but you need to wait patiently till the particular decision comes across. You cannot submit the same paper to multiple journals. And also there are certain rules and regulations on how much of the paper's content can be replicated in other papers, which are simultaneously being submitted in other places. So content of the paper should not be the same beyond a particular point. As I mentioned, if a PhD scholar has 10 ideas and the 10 ideas are based on the same subject material, the background and the literature review could be similar, but then the entire other part of the paper could be completely drastically different. So you need to justify on what grounds you are having commonalities in papers of your own writing. But it is advisable not to repeat beyond some 10-20% of your original content from paper to paper. And of course, the related question that comes up is citation, self-citations. Several of us actually end up self-citing ourselves beyond a particular limit. Even if there is no relevance, you end up seeing your name everywhere in the paper, next paper. Don't do that. So that is also very kind of a malpractice, just the same as submitting one paper to multiple places. So you need to be careful in these. These are ethical practices that are attached with publishing. This is ethical publishing as a topic. Next question is from Suresh Kumar from JP University, Himachal. So he says he has some problems with the PC. Okay, so he's writing the question below. So how to determine the quality of a paper? Is the impact factor of the journal in which it got published or the number of citations received by the published paper? Okay, now I think Suresh ji, this is what I would explain to you. I have discussed about the quality of the paper at the initial level before it gets to the publishers, how the writers should determine whether their paper is of quality or not. That I discussed already. I'm sure you heard it. But when it comes to post-production quality of paper, it can be used or assessed at the first level by the impact factor of the journal, because a journal's impact factor is also directly related to the citations on an average papers get in that particular journal in that particular year. So a particular paper getting cited would feed back into the journal's impact factor. So both are connected. And the first level, you could definitely determine by impact factor whether the paper is great or not. But on the other hand, just by looking at the impact factor, you might not understand everything. So you would also want to look at the number of citations a paper has got. But sometimes also remember, papers get cited in some disciplines more often than in some other disciplines. Like a discipline like philosophy or linguistics, or for example, let's say some tough discipline could get lesser citations just because there are lesser people working in those fields. So do not categorically judge, but just because there are lesser citations, the paper's quality is less. No, it depends on the discipline. Everything is case by case basis. I hope I answered your question. Next question is, structure of the conceptual. Okay, so Suman Bish is writing, I have question for structure of conceptual paper, literature review and methodology. So Suman Bish, what is the question? Please speak up if you can.
Thank you, ma'am, Shalja ma'am.
Yes, Suman.
I want to ask like how to go for a conceptual paper. In the conceptual paper, I have a question regarding the review of literature and research methodology.
So what is the question? How to go about conceptual paper? That is the question, right?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. In that particularly review of literature and research methodology.
Okay,
How
conceptual.
to frame that?
What do you mean by conceptual paper? Can you just elaborate a little bit? What do you mean by conceptual paper?
Madam, I don't have exact idea about the conceptual paper. Like based on the concept, I have a concept in my mind. There is a lot of disturbance from other participant.
Yeah, no, don't worry, don't worry, Suman. You concentrate on me, I concentrate on you. The other things can go away.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. Actually,
Okay.
I have one concept like for sustainable use of water. So in that, I want to incorporate some technique where I have a complete concept. So I want to have how to go for writing that conceptual paper where I want to present my concept.
Right. Okay, let me just quickly give you 2 pointers. You can then snowball on those and learn on your own a little bit, right? So basically, conceptual paper is something that can be totally theoretical in nature. And what you just explained is a mix of theory plus a bit of innovative, experimentative kind of modeling, what you have mentioned. So what you should do in any paper is give a healthy enough background of through literature review, first of all. That is the conceptual literature review. You can call it thematic conceptual literature review, wherein you will discuss about the said question, the water governance or whatever technology that you are interested in, right? So you will give enough information that exists so far, the technical aspects as well as theoretical aspects initially, and then you situate yourself basically. This is where is the research gap, and this is the research gap I want to address through this methodology. You understand the point? So it takes you from 2-3 sections, but that is the route you should follow. That is the path.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
And answer some of your questions?
Yes, ma'am. One more question in that only. My structure will be like introduction, then a review of literature, and then followed by research methodology, and then its usefulness or findings, and then usefulness, like in the conceptual paper, structure wise. How I will put it my things in that one.
Yeah, so first of all, you should ask questions in question format. You're making statements. That's all right. So don't do that mistake in paper.
How my research paper will flow in this structure form.
You should know. That is what you should know, how your research paper will flow. But I can tell you one thing. Revisit this lecture. Sir will most probably have a recording of this available. Listen to each and every section one more time. I have given all the answers to your fundamental dilemmas, pointers, everything. By all means, you will get answer from there. because it's
Sure, ma'am.
unfair to repeat everything here again. Is that
True,
okay?
ma'am. Thank you. Yes,
Okay,
ma'am. Thank you,
Suman,
ma'am.
good luck.
Thank you.
Good luck. Yeah. So can I take few more questions, or sir, what is the idea, Giridhar sir? Because there are few more questions in the list.
Shwetaji, do you have any more questions for?
There is one more question, which is from Anubha Ray. Is qualitative study more difficult to get published? For the sake of mixed method, should the scholars of humanities go for quantitative methodology?
That's a wonderful question, Anubha, right?
Right, ma'am.
Yeah, that's a wonderful question, and I'm very glad you actually kind of belled the cat, because this cat is always troubling everybody. Usually, people who are working in humanities and social sciences are either being told indirectly in so many words, or being forced to think that only quantitative methodologies work for publication as well as for research, popularity. That's not the case. In fact, it's the opposite. Any research that purely depends on quantitative terminologies and methodologies in social sciences, and unless you are an economist, of course, and humanities, is also going to show the weaknesses of the researcher and their guide. Because social sciences and humanities are very much qualitative in orientation, and so are the other sciences, whether we like it or not. Only thing is that we in social sciences and humanities have the obligation to acknowledge the subjectivities of the society and people. The moment you start putting everything in quantitative methodologies, you are trying to avoid that responsibility. It's taking the easy way out. If you want to take the easy way out, you should go the quantitative way. Despite what the others might say, that quantitative methodologies are tough, very difficult, regression mushkil hai, R mushkil hai, ye mushkil hai, wo mushkil hai. These are only skin deep. They are not allowing you to dig deeper and bring out the fascinating new aspects of social life and linguistic life to the forefront. And there is no methodology that has been, just like there is no single paper that gives all the knowledge in your domain, there is no single methodology which allows us for, coming up with the most convincing explanation of the facts. That is the reason why we always try and mix methods. In social sciences, the new order, my training in Europe as well as my exposure to USA and other parts of the world like Australia and also in Japan, I have always seen people trying to mix methods, neither using quantitative totally nor using qualitative totally, going for mixed methods, depending on the feasibility and the requirement of the research problem. So I hope my question answers my answer, gives a satisfactory answer to your question.
Ma'am, as we are running short of time, so I'll be taking one more question.
Okay.
This is what are the criteria to connect or identify the right journal in any subject area?
Right. That's a very good, very important question. Criteria, as I mentioned briefly in today's discussion, are the fit for topic. The journals always come up with a page of explanation in their web pages. By all means, go to Scopus or Schemago or any other web-based Web of Science or Gestor or any other source where you can go into particular journals in your field. If you actually go into Schemago, it's easier, because Schemago will classify journals based on the subject subject classifications. So you know what is your subject, that much I assure that you would know what it is, what you are working on. So that match you should check out. Now, the first step to know which journal is in your field is also a question many students want to know about. So by all means, use the keywords in search, whether in Google Scholar or in Web of Science, wherever you are going for searching. Take your university web, library portal. That is the starting point for all PhD scholars and other scholars under PhD, undergraduate, graduate level scholars also. They should go there, students, and they should start with keyword search. Keyword search will bring you to possible results, and results are based in journals. And you will also have e-journals portal in the website, library website. You should go there. You should start browsing. Every day, spend half an hour to browse through your subject journals. Read through their explanations, their aims and objectives. And by the end of the first month or second month, you will not only find what is your favorite journal, where you want to send your first paper for whatever reasons, and whether that journal is beyond your scope and your outreach, or you can actually aim that high, or you want to find a journal which is in your reasonable reach. So those are some of the things that you should do in a piecemeal basis. These are not supposed to be developed in overnight. It's not a knee-jerk knowledge. It is a knowledge that is contemplated. It is practiced every day, and writing is also practiced every day. None of us becomes writers just by 1 week effort or 1 month effort. It is a practice. So writers must practice everyday writing. Whatever they are feeling like writing that day, they can write in a journal, e-journal, and they can keep on substantiating with the DP of literature at a later stage. So the idea of matching your paper with a journal happens in step-by-step manner. The easy step is to go to Schemago and type a couple of journals names that you know from your field are, and then there will be some other journals mentioned along with that particular result. So you can snowball. Snowballing is going from one to the next level, again to the next level. So that is how you should grow with your knowledge about journal and the suitability of your paper.
Thank you, madam. I first congratulate and thank you for such a beautiful and insightful presentation and touching upon the important aspect of quality writing in research. So now over to you, Naman.
Thank you so much, ma'am. And thank you to all our participants for asking such insightful questions. And now we are heading towards the ending of our today's event. And not a single event can be performed without the hard work of the organizing team. Their efforts are marvelous. So thank you a lot to the LNMIIT library team for organizing this important event. And now it is the time to invite Dr. Shweta Pandey, the Assistant Librarian of LNMIIT, to propose the vote of thanks. Ma'am.
Thank you, Naman. Thank you, Naman. Good morning, everyone. On behalf of the Central Library and Institute of the LNMIIT Jaipur, I feel immense pleasure to take this opportunity to propose vote of thanks today. I extend my sincere thanks to our invited speaker, Dr. Shailja Nandigamma, Associate Professor at BITS Pilani, for accepting our invitation and sharing her insightful experience and knowledge with all the participants today. It has given a clear understanding on how to focus on improving the writing skills, style of expression that researchers should use to define the intellectual boundaries of their discipline and specific area of expertise. Thank you, Dr. Nandigamma. We thank Dr. Usha Kanungo, HOD Department of HSS, for sharing her thoughts on technical writing and the linguistic part, which is also an important aspect to connect and communicate with the readers. We extend our heartfelt thanks and gratitude to Professor R. Gangupadhyay sir for accepting our request as a chief guest today in the concise notice. Your words of wisdom have always been inspiring and motivating, which gives strength to move on and on. Thank you, sir, for sharing your words of wisdom with all of us and spending your valuable time with us. We also extend our sincere thanks and gratitude to our director, Professor Rahul Banerjee, for his continuous support and guidance, who is always with us as a great source of inspiration. We miss your presence, sir, today. We thank to our librarian, Mr. Girdhar Kunkur, sir, for inspiring and mentor us to take this event beyond the boundaries of the LNMIT and making it remarkable success. We also thank to our student, Mr. Naman Dhanotia, an anchor for today's event, who hosts the entire event with great enthusiasm and smile. At last, as it has been correctly said, that success or achievement is the result of the combined effort of every individual. And for our success and growth, we have energetic team members who gave their best in making this event successful. Thank you, Mr. Raj Singh, Mr. Parvez, Mr. Vijay, Ms. Parminder, Ms. Neha, Mr. Rajesh, and Mr. Ghansham for your all support. Last but not the least, I would like to extend our special thanks to the wonderful participant for their active participation and making this event a huge success. With this note, I once again thank you everyone for your gracious presence today. Stay healthy and stay safe. Over to you, Naman.
Thank you so much, ma'am. and for your kind words. And it is under your guidance that we are on completion of this successful event today. And we are also grateful to all the participants who have accepted our invitation to be a part of this elite event. That concludes a remarkably memorable and knowledgeable webinar. And I hope our objective to make you all learn about quality research writing is fulfilled and is definitely going to help you in your future careers. I request once again to all the participants to kindly fill up the feedback form in case they haven't. Your feedback is valuable to all of us. Once again, on behalf of LNMIIT and LNMIIT library team, I thank you and promise you that this may be the end of today's session, but undoubtedly it is a new beginning for all of us. Thank you so much. Goodbye. Stay safe.
Thank you all. Wonderful. Wonderful event.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shailija madam. It was indeed a great, listening to you again, during this webinar. And I'm 100% sure that everyone, whoever participated in this webinar, were highly benefited by, this kind of sharing of knowledge. Not only by you, but also by Professor Gangopadhyay, by Professor Usha Kanungo, and through interactions and things like that. So thank you so very much, and I thank our audience also. Thank you.
I must say, I reiterate and I join everybody in thanking, first of all, Dr. Nandigama, to the library and the organizers, Dr. Kunkur, Dr. Pandey. I thank sincerely Professor Gangopadhyay. We have learned so much today. It was indeed a very enriching experience being a part of this event. Thanks a lot, and a big hats off to everybody. It was indeed a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Very good. Wonderful event.
Thank you all, and we are now closing the event. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you, sir. Sorry, I lost my connection.
Thank you.